Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to World of Tanks Blitz. I am going to be here doing a garage review of this thing, the Panzer II J, one of the rarest tanks on World of Tanks PC, and in Blitz, well, it's never been for sale for quite £100 like it is on PC, but it is still a fairly rare tank, and even rarer nowadays after the dreaded update 5.5, which really killed this thing off. Due to the more concise tech trees. But we'll go through that as we come to it. So, it's recently been back on sale again, but after update 5.5, I suggest no one really get this tank unless you're like me and you're a collector tank. Sorry, let me try that again. Unless you're like me and you're a tank collector and you want it in your garage because you didn't already. But honestly, don't go spending loads on getting this tank because it really is just useless nowadays. Back in the good old days, this thing was very good. It was a fun tank back before update 5.5. I know I said I never had it, but always I knew this tank was fun back when the tech tree was really wide and we had all of this variety of tanks to choose from, and this thing was a pretty decent little tank. The armor, especially the gun, not so much, but you could still accomplish things with the gun. But now you can't really, and that's due to the wider spread of these things and the more concise tech tree. So enough of that, we'll discuss it as we go on. But yeah, so 410 HP is to the mid/mid-lower amount of HP. It's nowhere near as much as the Panzer III, for example, which I refuse to play. But yeah, it's nowhere near as much as this thing, which has got 440, the same as the Panzer III A. Something like the medium has even got more armor. The Chi have got more armor as well, and yeah, it's just not quite as much HP as anything else. However, the armor, oh boy, the armor is definitely the best thing about this tank. 80 frontal turret, 50 side, 50 rear, and the same for the hull as well. So that's a lot of armor. That's more armor than a KV-1. You don't believe me? Let's go to the KV-1 here. There we go, my good old KV-1. It's got more frontal armor than this thing. 75, 57, 57. It's nearly, it's more armor than this thing, and it's at tier 3, and it only ever sees tier 3s. It will never see tier 4s, which is definitely a good thing based on the gun. However, yeah, it's, more frontal armor than the KV-1 at this tier is ridiculous, quite frankly. And it would have been more ridiculous before update 5.5, but now it's not quite so ridiculous anymore. But it is still very strong front and side armor. The next closest thing is probably something like the Panzer III, which has got 55 frontal turret and 50 frontal hull, which is the same as the side armor on this thing. Side and rear armor of this thing. It is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. There are very few things that can reliably go through your front if you're not if you are angling, especially. Something like the tank destroyers with big guns, such as the FCM-36, the Su-76I, which even this thing doesn't have as much frontal armor. This thing's got 60 frontal hull armor, which is still not as much as the Panzer II J. But yeah, the only things that are really going to give you any problems from the front is something like the Marder. These tanks which have got big pack guns, like this Pack 36, which has got 96 mils of penetration, which can get through your frontal armor if you're not angled. So you have got to worry about things like tank destroyers, but otherwise you're pretty impervious to things from the front, especially if you angle it. You can angle it to an angle like this, 45 degrees, and you're pretty impervious to anything, absolutely anything. Because things can get through your side armor, but it will not be reliable. Here's a tip if you're trying to kill one of these things in a battle and you don't know what to do. This side hatch and this viewport are the weak points. I think this is something like 25 mil thick, and this thing is also not as thick as 50 on the side, so if you are struggling to get through this thing, aim for these spots on the side of the tank, because those are the weak spots, and that is where you will get through. The same as if you're driving one of these tanks and you come up against another Panzer II J. If you do that, go for these hatches. You can get through those just about with your premium APCR, and we'll come to the gun in a minute. So yeah, that's where you need to kill this thing. If you can't just raw penetrate through the armor, those little hatches there, and maybe the cupola, but I don't think the cupola counts as a weak spot. Even if it is, it's very small and very difficult to hit. So yeah, not the most advised way of killing one of these things. However, the armor is not as good as it used to be, and it's not because the thickness has changed, but it's more to do with what tanks you're coming up against now. Because of how they've streamlined the tech tree, there's very limited amount of choices for people to go for when they come for tanks. And I'm specifically talking about this scourge of the low tiers. I'm talking about this seal clubber of tier 3, which is the Panzer III. More specifically, this top gun, the KWK-39L60, the 50mm, because that's got 65 average pen, which is not enough to go through your front, but it can get through your side pretty easily, and they are everywhere, and they're far more mobile than you, and they can easily get around your sides and rears, where they can just go straight through your front, straight through your armour, sorry. Something like the Chi has, they have got decent guns, 65, 66 average pen. All of the tanks that are left in the tech tree can easily get this thing from the side and rear, and what I mean by this is that back when the tech tree was far more open, you had a far bigger variety of tanks coming for you, which you just don't see nowadays. And I mean that as in tanks which don't have as much pen as the tanks in the tech tree. What does this tank have? 42 average pen on the T15, for example. You would see some of these rolling around. What else have I got here? I've got, the M3 Light, but what else used to be in the tech tree? The medium used to be in the tech tree. What's that got? 65 average pen, yeah. Something like, I don't really have anything else actually from the tech tree that used to be in the tech tree here. But you used to see a whole load of other tanks at this tier, which would struggle more to get through your armor. You would have a higher chance of getting through, of getting attacked by those things, which would have more problems than coming up against the hordes of Panzer IIIs like you normally do nowadays in tier 3 battles, which do not struggle nearly as much to get through your armor because of their accuracy and penetration, etc., etc. And they do a decent amount of damage. This thing does like 80 damage or something with its 50mm. Which, makes this thing a little bit more redundant than it used to be. And again, another point to do with that is that we look at the gun, and normally I'd go over the mobility of this thing, but I feel like this segues us into the gun when we're talking about the low tier rebalance, which is that the gun was never the strong point of this tank. As we see here, it is a tier 1 gun on a tier 3 tank, which is the KWK-38, which is a 2cm flak gun basically. 2.3 second aim time, 0.34 dispersion, okay, looking decent so far. 935 DPM, yeah, okay. 5.63 magazine reload time, yeah, that seems decent enough. 0.13 reload time between bursts of 2, yeah, that's pretty good. 4 shots in the magazine, okay, 2 shells per shot, okay, fair enough. 23 average pen, hang on a minute. 46 average pen with APCR. 12 average damage with AP, 7 with APCR, 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of gun elevation. Now, it's mostly the pen and the damage which is the problem, which is obviously to stop this thing becoming too OP, they gave it a really, really terrible gun, which is fair enough. And back before update 5.5, that wasn't as big of a problem as it is nowadays. And again, I'm more specifically talking about tanks that you come up against, because with 23 average pen, you can't get through the front of a Chiha. You can't get through an M3 Light. You can't get through the hull of a Marder. And you've got no chance against this. Even with APCR, you struggle against a lot of these tanks. especially from any sort of range whatsoever, which is fine because you're basically a heavy tank disguised as a light tank, which is, you know, a fun enough thing. But when you have 3 of these per team per game, it starts to get old quick, because the armour of this thing is 50 on the front of the hull, 55 on the front of the turret, 30 on the sides and rears of both things, and these things are everywhere now. Before update 5.5 you'd get 1, maybe 2 in a game. Nowadays they're common as mug. They're as, you know, common as anything to see these things, and it really kills this tank in particular when you're driving it, because with, you know, 46 average pen, you can't get through the front of it, you struggle to get through the sides of it, and it doesn't struggle to get through the sides and rears or even front of you if it just goes for APCR. And, you know, since Seal Clubbers play this tank especially, and Seal Clubbers just won't have any problems switching to APCR when they need to, because they're Seal Clubbers, and they can just go straight through the front of your hull, and you can't do anything to them, especially if they face hug you, which is another thing Seal Clubbers will do, because it's low tiers, no one knows how to deal with face hugging people, so Seal Clubbers can easily just face hug a tank, bang bang bang, kill it, they've suffered no damage in return, and that's especially problematic for this. Whereas before update 5.5 you wouldn't get that problem, because there'd be a lot more variety in the tanks. Tanks which would struggle more to get through you, and you would struggle less to get through them. That's not to say the tank is unusable. It is very usable, especially if you're one of the few tier 3s in the game, because premium ammo only comes to tanks at tiers 3 and up, which means you are invulnerable to nearly everything at tier 2 apart from tank destroyers. From the front you're completely invulnerable. The Panzer Jäger won't be able to get through your front, the medium won't be able to get through your front, universal carrier, etc, etc. They will struggle to get through your front, and even from the side they'll struggle to get through you. For example, T1E6 has got 48 average pen with APCR, with AP. It can't get through your side, rear or front. The only chance the T1E6 has of killing you is going for that hatch. You know, so most of the things at tier 2 will struggle to get through you. The T2 Lighter's got a pretty decent gun on it, I think. 44 average pen. Okay, maybe not. But even so, they can get through the side of your hatches, but very unreliably. The only things that might give you problems are, again, tank destroyers with 67 average pen on a Panzer Jäger. They can get through your side and rears pretty easy, but when it comes to tier 3, there's a lot more things that you can't kill that can kill you because of that low tier rebalance. And that's just the thing that's killed this tank for a lot of people. I was watching Meadsy's video on this tank not so long ago, and he said that him, along with a lot of other people, had sold the tank when update 5.5 came around, because it just completely killed the tank with how many Panzer IIIs, for example, are turning up on the battlefield that you just can't do anything to that can do a lot to you. And again, like I keep saying, Seal Clubbers enjoy playing in the Panzer III, which is why I'll never play it. But yeah, so there's a long tangent on the Panzer II J and the Panzer III. As for mobility, it is a heavy tank. 18 average speed, kilometers per hour, 9.4 power to weight ratio, 16.56 turret traverse, and a 31 degrees of hull traverse is really not that great. Again, 168 average, 168 horsepower. Yeah, it's really not mobile at all. Even with engine power boost, 20% engine power for 15 seconds engine power boost. Even with that going, it is slow to get anywhere. It is slow to move, slow to traverse. If people start going around you, there's very little you can do about it because of your gun and your terrible mobility. But you do make up for that with your very, very good armour for tier 3. So yeah, there's the stats, which I rambled on far too long about. So I'll try and wrap the rest of this up quick. As for equipment, multi-purpose restoration and your engine power boost, you can go ahead and mix them up as you want. As for ammo loadout, you do carry 400 rounds of ammo. You need it. With how little damage you do, especially with APCR, which you have to fire mostly. Lots of people will load this thing up with pure APCR, because there is very little you can do with regular armor piercing if you carry too much of it. I go with a balance. However, you can very easily burn through this stuff, especially if your team dissolves around you. So try and use AP, obviously, if you can, but with 23 mils of pen, honestly, there's not too much. Not too much you can do about it. And when they redid premium ammo, you're going to be doing less damage per magazine with APCR, so you have to fire even more of it than you used to. So this thing really is not a credit maker. But yeah, still 400 rounds of ammo, you need it. So go ahead, mount mostly APCR, I would say, if you do have this tank, or plan on getting this tank. As for equipment, honestly, improved vents is far better. Over calibrated shells, you get an extra 2 mils of pen with APCR, and 1 mil of pen with AP. It's really not worth it, honestly. Improved vents is far more useful than calibrated shells. Even with 48 mils of pen on your APCR, it really doesn't make a difference at all, especially with the very rapid drop-off in penetration over distance that autocannons have. So yeah, improved vents is definitely important, better one for this. Improved modules, the extra track durability, definitely. You know, your tracks are very exposed, they will eat a lot of shots, which is good. However, it does mean they suffer damage a lot more. So improved modules is definitely more important. As are coated optics. You're not a sniper, you are a heavy tank. Go with coated optics. Supercharge for the extra shell velocity and the decrease in penetration over distance. Again, that's very important, especially for the penetration decrease over distance, because you need as much penetration as you can get. So supercharge is going to be more important, I would say, over enhanced gun lane drive. I mean, you have a very good aim time anyway, so supercharge is the no-brainer here. Enhanced armor for the extra, you know, slightly better armor. It's definitely useful, especially at this tier, so definitely go with enhanced armor. Engine accelerator for the extra engine power. You're going to want that, because otherwise it'd be a 160 horsepower engine, and you do get a buff to get it to over 9 horsepower per ton ratio, so definitely engine accelerator. Then vert stabs. You know, you're going to be doing a lot of firing on the move, I would imagine, you know, with that slow hull and turret traverse, so vert stabs is going to be more important. Enhanced tracks, so that your suspension comes up you know, quicker and to 100%. Save your, you know, it saves you on your consumable, and then your choice of whatever the hell those two things are. So overall, it is a fun tank, definitely. Is it a good tank? No. Is it fun? Yes. Do you make credits? No. Do you lose on average 20,000 credits a game? Yes, you do. If you're running this tank, you really need another premium tank at higher tiers which can make you back credits, because otherwise you're going to be losing a lot of credits if you play this tank. You know, if you play 5 games, that's easily 100,000 credits gone just from ammunition expenditure. It is nearly impossible to make a profit driving the Panzer II J. It's still fun, however, but don't go out of your way to get it. It's really not that great after update 5.5, sadly, as you will see from the gameplay that I have to go along with this. As fun as it was to play it, it was not fun at the same time. So yeah, there you go. Panzer II J, I'll thank you for watching, and goodbye.